Imagine falling in love only to discover that your heart is tied to a curse older than time itself. Lila thought she had finally found peace in a small, quiet town, far away from her painful past. But everything changed the moment she stepped into the forgotten crypt at the edge of the woods. There, she uncovered an ancient family secret, a love story so twisted by betrayal and sacrifice that it had doomed generations before her. Lila's discovery began innocently enough, with a mysterious locket she found buried among her late grandmother's belongings. But the moment she held it, she started having vivid dreams of a hauntingly beautiful woman, Evelyn, and her tragic love affair with Elias, a man who seemed both victim and villain. Lila's connection to their story grew stronger with every passing day, as if the locket itself was calling her deeper into the mystery. As Lila began to piece together the fragments of Evelyn's story, strange and terrifying things started happening around her. Shadows moved where there was no light. Whispers echoed through empty rooms, and she couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching her. Then one night, Lila heard a voice that wasn't her own. "Set us free, or lose everything you love." What she didn't know was that breaking the curse would come at a cost, one so devastating it would leave her questioning whether love was worth the ultimate sacrifice. Lila couldn't shake the voice she'd heard, its chilling warning echoing in her mind as she stared at the locket. The intricate design of the pendant felt alive, its grooves almost pulsing under her fingers. Her grandmother had never mentioned it. But now Lila wondered if it was deliberately hidden to keep the secret buried. Determined to find answers, she began scouring old letters and photographs, searching for any clue about Evelyn and Elias. What she uncovered was more unsettling than she imagined. A faded photograph showed Evelyn, her eyes filled with a strange mix of sorrow and longing. On the back, a single line was scribbled in a trembling hand: "Love binds us, even in death." Alongside it, a journal described how Evelyn had fallen deeply in love with Elias, a man whose charm masked a dark secret. He had made a desperate pact with forces beyond this world, all in the name of keeping their love alive. But the journal ended abruptly, the last page torn, leaving Lila with more questions than answers. The crypt, she realized, wasn't just a forgotten place. It was where the curse had begun. Evelyn and Elias had paid a price, but the journal hinted that the curse wasn't broken. It had been passed down, and now, Lila was its newest victim. As the pieces of the story came together, strange things began to happen. The lights in her house flickered, doors creaked open on their own, and shadows moved in ways they shouldn't. Lila knew she had to go back to the crypt, but dread filled her. What awaited her there might not just be answers. It could be her undoing. The night before Lila planned to return to the crypt, the strange occurrences in her home grew worse. The sound of faint whispers filled the air, but when she turned on the lights, the room was empty. Objects she had carefully placed on shelves were suddenly on the floor, shattered, as if someone, or something, was lashing out. The locket, however, remained unscathed, glowing faintly in the dim light of her bedside lamp. It felt as though it was watching her, waiting for her to make a decision. Unable to sleep, Lila dove deeper into the fragmented story of Evelyn and Elias. She discovered that their love wasn't as pure as it seemed. Evelyn had learned of Elias's pact too late, a deal that promised them eternity together but at the cost of countless innocent lives. When Evelyn tried to stop him, she became the first sacrifice to seal the curse, her soul tethered to the locket and crypt. But Elias, consumed by guilt and anger, had disappeared, leaving the curse to claim the descendants of anyone connected to them. What Lila didn't understand was why she, someone who had no memory of Evelyn or Elias before now, was being pulled into this nightmare. Her grandmother's connection seemed to hold part of the answer, but every clue only led to more questions. That night, as she sat in silence, her phone buzzed unexpectedly. A text from an unknown number appeared on the screen. "You're not alone. Come to the crypt. We'll finish this together." Lila's heart raced. Who could it be? Was it someone who had been through this before, or was it a trap? Her thoughts spiraled, but deep down, she knew she couldn't run. Whatever was waiting in that crypt wouldn't stop until it had her too. Lila stood at the edge of the woods, the crypt barely visible under the faint glow of the moon. The text message still burned in her mind. She had no idea who had sent it, but it felt like a lifeline, a dangerous one. The air was heavy, colder than it should have been, and the forest seemed unnaturally quiet. Each step closer to the crypt felt like walking into the jaws of something ancient and hungry. When she reached the iron gates, they creaked open on their own, as if inviting her in. Her breath came in shallow bursts as she clutched the locket tightly in her hand, its faint warmth both comforting and unsettling. Shadows seemed to shift unnaturally around her, and she felt eyes watching her from the darkness. She wanted to turn back, but the weight of the curse felt too close now, too personal to ignore. Inside the crypt, the atmosphere was suffocating. The air smelled of damp stone and decay, and faint whispers echoed in a language she couldn't understand. The text message's promise of help seemed like a cruel joke. She was completely alone. But then she heard it. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from the shadows. "Who's there?" Her voice trembled, the sound swallowed by the crypt's hollow walls. A figure emerged, cloaked in darkness. Their face was obscured, but the energy around them was suffocating. "You've come," they said, their voice cold and familiar. "But you don't understand. You can't end this without a sacrifice." Before Lila could respond, the crypt began to tremble. The shadows surged, forming ghostly shapes that surrounded her. Her heart pounded as she realized the truth. The choice she would soon have to make would either save her or destroy everything she'd ever known. The crypt's trembling intensified, dust and shards of stone falling from the ceiling as the ghostly shapes pressed closer. Lila's grip on the locket tightened, its warmth now burning her palm. The cloaked figure stepped forward, their face briefly illuminated by the flickering light of an unseen flame. It wasn't a stranger. It was Elias. His features were sharper, his eyes hollow, but his presence was unmistakable. "You were never meant to be here," he said, his voice laced with bitterness. "The curse wasn't yours to bear, but now you're bound to it like the rest of us." Lila's breath caught. "You knew this would happen," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You're the one who started all of this. Why didn't you stop it?" Elias's expression darkened. "Do you think I haven't tried? The curse feeds on sacrifice, but it never ends. Evelyn thought she could break it, and look where that brought us. I've been trapped here, waiting for someone who could finally undo what I've done. That someone is you." Before Lila could process his words, a chilling voice echoed through the crypt, overlapping Elias's. "He's lying." Evelyn's apparition appeared, her translucent form radiating sorrow and anger. "He doesn't want to break the curse. He wants to escape it. If you trust him, you'll condemn yourself." Lila's mind reeled as the crypt's shadows swirled violently around her. The locket in her hand pulsed in response to Evelyn's presence, as if urging her to choose. Elias reached out, his hand trembling. "If you want the truth, give me the locket. It's the key to freeing us all." Evelyn's voice cut through the chaos. "No, Lila. Destroy it. It's the only way to end this forever." Lila stood frozen, caught between two desperate souls, unsure of who to believe. The crypt shuddered violently as if urging her to decide before it was too late. Lila's heart raced as she looked between Elias and Evelyn, each urging her in opposite directions. The locket burned hotter in her hand, as if sensing her indecision. The crypt groaned around her, the air thick with a suffocating energy that made it hard to think. "You don't have much time," Elias said, his voice growing desperate. "If you destroy it, you'll trap everyone. Me, Evelyn, even yourself. We'll all be lost in this curse forever." "Don't listen to him," Evelyn countered, her voice trembling with emotion. "The locket binds the curse to this world. Break it, and the curse ends. Yes, it will cost something, but freedom always does." Lila's head spun. Her instinct screamed to trust Evelyn, but the fear in Elias's eyes seemed so human, so real. The shadows around her swirled faster, forming grotesque faces that hissed and snarled. Time was slipping away, and she had to decide. In a moment of clarity, Lila raised the locket high. "If the truth is in this, then it's time to end it." She hurled it to the ground, shattering it against the stone floor. A deafening scream filled the crypt as a burst of light engulfed the room. The shadows dissolved, Eveline's form flickering as she gave Lila a faint, grateful smile. "Thank you," she whispered before fading away. Elias, however, didn't vanish. Instead, he fell to his knees, his face twisted in pain. "You freed them, but not me," he said, his voice breaking. "The curse was my doing. My punishment is eternal." As the crypt grew silent, Lila realized the final twist. The locket was gone, but its mark remained on her hand, glowing faintly. She wasn't free. She had taken on a piece of the curse to save the others. The sacrifice was hers all along. The crypt was eerily quiet now. The oppressive weight that had hung in the air lifted. Lila stood amidst the broken remains of the locket, her breath coming in shallow gasps as the faint glow on her palm began to fade. The shadows, the whispers, and even the tremors were gone. Yet the emptiness that followed was almost more unsettling. Elias knelt on the cold stone floor, his figure now more human, more fragile. "You did what I couldn't," he said, his voice low and hollow. "You ended their torment. But your sacrifice binds you to this place now, just as I am." His words hit Lila like a blow, but she refused to accept them fully. "I didn't come this far to end up like you," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "If there's one thing I've learned, it's that curses only have power if you let them. I'm taking my life back." Elias looked at her, a flicker of hope and sadness crossing his face. "Maybe you can," he said softly, "but it will take strength I never had." As the first rays of dawn filtered through the cracks in the crypt, Lila turned toward the exit. The air outside was crisp and fresh, as if the forest itself had been cleansed. She could still feel the weight of what had happened, but it was different now, lighter, more distant. Weeks passed, and though life returned to a semblance of normal, Lila knew she wasn't entirely free. The faint mark on her hand served as a reminder of the cost of breaking the curse and the strength it took to do so. Eveline's smile, her quiet gratitude stayed with her. It wasn't just about ending the curse, it was about reclaiming hope. And in that, Lila found her freedom,